I have a story for you. I'm Joseph. This is Input English. These stories that I tell on this channel are created as content for you. They are original stories and they're made for a very specific reason. If you want to learn English by listening, I suppose you could watch Netflix. You could watch videos. But the native content is sometimes difficult to understand because of the way people speak. Fundamentally, entertainment videos that are available to you online are purpose-built for entertainment. They are not designed for language learning specifically. People have adapted them for language learning, but what we have found is it's not very efficient. It's not very satisfying. And a lot of people have commented on this channel that when they try to use entertainment content for learning, they're disappointed. So people frequently gravitate to content that is made for this purpose. That's why these stories exist. The challenge for the creator is to make a story that's useful for language learning, but is also interesting. If I make a bunch of boring stories, nobody wants to watch them, including me. So let's get started. Today, we're going to introduce some new characters, but you actually know a little bit about them because of the game I am playing with you. One of the things that we've talked about on this channel is the need to notice things. And one of the things I have done is introduced two characters without giving you their names. I'm referring to the parents of David and Charlotte. In previous videos, I told you a lot about Charlotte and David and how they moved with their parents to their new house, which is next door to Bobby and Craig. And of course, Bobby and Craig's parents are Kathy and Robert. Oh, I forgot to mention Oscar, the dog. So these characters have all been discussed in other videos, and I invite you to enjoy those videos. All those episodes are chock full of interesting terms, expressions, vocabulary, and clearly spoken English. So today we're going to meet Ginger and Bill. Ginger and Bill met in college. They got married in college, and shortly thereafter, Ginger discovered that she was pregnant. She was pregnant with David. She decided to drop out of school to focus on her health and having a healthy baby and raising their new baby until he was old enough to go to preschool. In other words, she put her college education on hold. She wasn't quitting, she was postponing. Bill agreed with this approach, thought it was perfect. When David was born, she focused on raising her new son and providing a good environment for him to develop. When he was 4 years old, he was ready for preschool, but right about that time, Ginger discovered that she was pregnant. She was pregnant with Charlotte. So she continued not going to school, and when Charlotte was 4 years old, she decided that it was time to get back to college. When Bill graduated from college with a degree in business, he took a position in a bank. He worked his way up in that bank, and he is now an assistant manager. He is very happy with his job. It's exactly what he wanted to do. When Ginger was born, she was named Virginia Ann, but her family had always intended on calling her Ginger. Why? Well, because Ginger's mom really liked the movie star Ginger Rogers. So she named Ginger Virginia, knowing that a common nickname for Virginia is Ginger. When Ginger graduated from college She received her bachelor's degree in biology, and she started looking for a job. She was thrilled to find a job posting at the university for a full-time research assistant in the biology department. When she looked into it, she was told that a new faculty member had been hired and he was arriving with an approved grant and funding. This position for research assistant was because the new faculty member did not want a graduate student to work part-time in his lab. He wanted a full-time research assistant. So the job description was written for that, and this was the position that Ginger applied for. She interviewed, everything went great, and she was hired. When she arrived in the laboratory, she realized that it needed to be cleaned up. It had not been used in months. A previous investigator had moved out, and it was not as tidy as she wanted it. So her first week was cleaning the surfaces, neatening things up, and putting things away. There were some supplies left over that she might be able to use, but she quickly developed a long list of things that she needed to order. She talked to the faculty member for whom she worked, and they decided what needed to be ordered in terms of the equipment that was approved and funded, as well as all the supplies. This took weeks. Gradually, the equipment and the supplies came in. Some of the equipment was set up by the vendor's representative. The box would arrive, and then soon the technician would arrive. They would unbox the equipment, and the technician would install it and calibrate it. Other equipment arrived with a book. One piece of equipment came with a PDF. She scanned a code on the side of the box and then downloaded the instructions, and it was Ginger who had to install the equipment and calibrate it. She was not upset with this. She realized that she was trained to do this kind of thing, and this she considered normal. As the supplies came in, she had to figure out how to organize them in the storage areas, and she was pretty satisfied with how that was going. Soon they started setting up their experiments, and their first task was to develop several assays that basically duplicated the work of others and the work that the faculty member had done before. They needed to prove that they could measure these phenomena accurately in this lab. One day, Ginger was busy working on one of these assays, and two men arrived in the laboratory. One was dressed in a suit, and the other man was dressed as a security guard in uniform. They glanced at Ginger, but then turned to the office door, the office of the principal investigator. They knocked on the door, and they were immediately ushered into that room. The door closed. This was unusual, so Ginger was interested, but she didn't want to eavesdrop or snoop in the business of this principal investigator. She was very curious why these two fellows were there. The man in the suit left in fewer than 5 minutes. He came out of the door, closed the door behind him, and left the laboratory. The security guard remained. Now, Ginger is super curious. She found a reason to walk to that end of the laboratory, appearing to be looking for something, but she wanted to get a glimpse of what was going on inside this office. She could see through the glass windows into the office, but she wanted to get closer. When she got to the end of the counter and turned to the right, she had an opportunity to take a good look in through the window and see what was going on. The security guard was standing back very rigid and erect. Her boss was crouched over a box and he was loading things out of his desk into a small cardboard box. She saw that and kept going. She didn't want to be noticed. She didn't want to be perceived as snooping. She went back to where she was working, and soon the door opened and the two of them left the laboratory. They walked out with her boss carrying this small cardboard box. He did not look in her direction. They went out of the laboratory, down the hall, and vanished. It was about 5 minutes later, her cell phone rang. She answered it, and it was the administrative assistant to the chairman of their department. The administrative assistant said, "I'm sorry, I have some bad news for you. Your boss has been terminated. The grant is void, and your position has been eliminated. I'm very sorry to give you this information. I'm sure it has come as a shock, but I can't give you any details. If you have any questions, contact personnel and they will inform you of your rights and your options." Ginger was shocked. She had just been fired over the telephone. But for what? What is going on? The voice on the other end of the phone said, "You can go home now. We'll send you your last paycheck." Ginger put down what she was holding, gathered her things, knowing that she would never come back to this laboratory, and she went home. So what happened? It turns out that her boss, the new principal investigator who had been given an assistant professorship in the department, was a fraud. He didn't have a PhD. He didn't have a master's degree. He had a bachelor's degree and a bunch of forged documents. He had faked everything. He had worked as a research assistant, so he was familiar with these assays, but he did not have an advanced degree in biology, and he had no business getting a university faculty appointment. He was a fraud. This was disclosed to Ginger when she talked to personnel. They realized that she needed to understand and that this was not her fault. When all of this was disclosed to Ginger, she realized that this was through no fault of her own and that she had no reason to feel guilty or dirty. This was somebody else's problem. She was just swept along in the current because of his dishonest behavior. She refused to be a victim. She shrugged it off as just a strange thing that happened to her. And then when she got home, she started updating her resume because it was time to apply for another job. This time she applied for a job in patient education at the hospital. It looked like an interesting position, and they hired her to do that work. It was the income and the stability provided by that position at the hospital that later allowed Bill and Ginger to buy this house. Ginger likes the contact with the patients. She likes imparting her knowledge to the patients, giving them advice to help improve their health. She likes learning new things, and that's absolutely a job requirement that she continually improve her knowledge so that she can give people good advice on health issues. She doesn't practice medicine and she doesn't give medical advice. She gives general health advice about eating behavior, exercise, stress reduction, sleep, etc. Her office is focused on lifestyle issues and has the full support of the hospital to help people get healthier based on good lifestyle choices. I really have to like Ginger and her attitude. She refused to be a victim. She looked at this apparent defeat because she was fired, and she immediately dusted herself off, got her resume in order, and got a better job working in an honest department doing good work to help good people. She got there by a circuitous route. She didn't go straight from her college career into her dream job. She had to go through a circuitous or indirect route, but she got there nonetheless. And she really values having had that experience. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.